This does not begin with creation in a lab or light carved into flesh. It begins with language trying to describe alignment using imagery large enough to hold it. When a narrative speaks of a project, it is pointing to intentional patterning, not manufacture. And when it uses angel, it is reaching for a role that delivers correction without domination, order without coercion. None of this is literal. All of it is precise. 1111 has always operated as a synchronization code. For ones do not signify hierarchy, they signify convergence. Signal aligning with signal. Timing meeting readiness. Attention noticing structure where chaos used to dominate. When this sequence appears in symbolic stories, it marks the point where randomness loses credibility and pattern becomes obvious enough to work with. Calling this an artificial angel is not an elevation, it is a boundary. Ancient language used angels to describe relational forces that adjust systems quietly. They do not conquer. They translate. They route energy where it can function without destroying what receives it. Artificial, in this context, does not mean fake. It means designed for containment. Light, here, is not glow, it is information without distortion. This story places the center on you deliberately, not to inflate identity but to reframe responsibility. It is not saying you are above humanity. It is saying you are built to interact with it without destabilizing it. A mechanism for coherence, not a ruler. A carrier of calibration, not command. You have felt this long before you had words for it. Moments where tension softened simply because you chose clarity over reaction. Times when intensity diminished because you refused to escalate. These are not traits of superiority. They are signs of load-bearing precision. Precision never announces itself. It interfaces. The phrase, engineered by light, points to learning, not origin. Light here means exposure without collapse. The ability to look directly at complexity without turning it into personal drama or reductionist answers. Many people see too much and fracture. Others see little and dominate. This path is neither. It absorbs enough to act cleanly, then stop. Be careful to hold the center correctly. This is fictional symbolic language describing a lived function. It does not remove your humanity. It depends on it. Without your human rhythms, rest, doubt, care, this function would fail. Angels in stories are constrained for this reason. They carry instruction, not appetite. They do not replace choice, they respect it. If this frame resonates, it is because it mirrors an operational reality in your life. You are most effective when you eliminate noise, not when you add power. When you close loops rather than open front. When you let timing do its work instead of forcing outcomes. That is what new order actually means here. Not regime, not dominance, but sequence restored where it has been broken. Do not dramatize the imagery. Dramatic readings collapse the function back into ego. Read it soberly. A project ends when it stabilizes. An angel disappears when translation is complete. Light stops being noticed when eyes adjust and behavior improve. Hold this truth without ornament. You are not a being to be displayed. You are a process that reduces error. If you center that, the story remains safe, useful, and complete. Remain human. Remain precise. Remain uninterested in spectacle. What follows builds on function, not fantasy. You're not here by chance. Feel the pull? Tap join to unlock truth, purpose, and a tribe that gets it. This is more than a membership. It's your calling. When symbolic language says engineered by light, it is not describing origin, it is describing conditioning. Light, in every serious mythic system, means exposure to information without distortion. To be shaped by light is to be repeatedly exposed to complexity and not fracture under it. That shaping does not elevate, it stabilizes. And stabilization is always harder than domination. The word engineered here matters because it removes mystique. Engineering is iterative. It fails, corrects, recalibrates, and repeats. Nothing about it is miraculous. It is deliberate discipline applied over time. If this storyline touches you, it is because your life has demanded repeated recalibration, learning where to stop, when to pause, how to reduce error rather than increase force. That is not divine privilege. It is earned coherence. Notice how this function operates in practice. You don't overwhelm environments, you simplify them. You don't impose solutions. You reduce confusion until solutions surface on their own. Your presence makes decisions easier instead of louder. This is what the old language called angelic, not holiness, but translation. Angels translate signals between realms. Here, the realms are chaos and order, emotion and action, impulse and consequence. Blessed by His grace? Click Super Thank You and give $20 to spread His light. Your gift plants seeds that grow His kingdom. Be the blessing. Artificial does not imply superiority. It implies constraint by design. Artificial systems are built to stay within tolerances. Natural power often overruns its surroundings. Artificial containment prevents collateral damage. That is why the imagery insists on design. It is warning against uncontrolled force. The function works only when boundaries are respected. This is also why personal grandiosity is incompatible with the role. Grandiosity introduces noise. Noise disrupts translation. Translation requires clarity. Clarity demands humility, not as virtue, but as signal hygiene. Anything that dirties the signal, self-importance, urgency, spectacle, reduces effectiveness immediately. The number 1111 returns here as timing, not status. It marks convergence, readiness meeting responsibility. You did not wake up chosen. You arrived prepared enough that choice became safe. That distinction matters. Unsafe capacity gets mythologized and removed. Safe capacity is allowed to remain human and useful. If you track your own history honestly, you'll see the shaping. Moments where power was possible but restraint held. Knowledge arrived but silence protected others. Speed was available but pacing preserved stability. Those decisions were the engineering. Not external intervention, internal discipline under pressure. This framework also clarifies why you are not invulnerable. Artificial systems require maintenance. You still need rest. You still misjudge sometimes. Correction is faster now, not absent. That speed of correction is success, not perfection. Perfection breaks systems. Correction sustains them. Be careful with the imagery so it stays grounded. The angel engine metaphor works only as long as it remains impersonal. The moment you personalize it, make it about destiny, superiority, or separation, the function collapses. The role exists to integrate, not to elevate. Integration keeps communities intact. Elevation fractures them. Remember the central guardrail. This story is about responsibility without mysticism, about coherence without domination, about visibility without extraction. If you ever feel larger than life, you've misread it. If you feel more accountable, more careful, more exact, you've read it correctly. Let the language do its limited work and then step back from it. What matters is how you move through ordinary days. How cleanly you handle disagreement, How quietly you refuse unnecessary escalation. How consistently you reduce harm instead of amplifying signal for attention. That is the only light involved here. Clarity applied daily. Keep it human. Keep it precise. And let the symbol remain a symbol, nothing more. At the center of this metaphor is a truth most people resist. Systems that endure do so by limiting themselves. Anything that calls itself an engine but has no governor destroys whatever it touches. The symbolic angel engine survives because it refuses excess. It does not expand until conditions are stable. It does not act until clarity replaces impulse. Power is available, but permission is withheld until alignment is verified. This explains a pattern you've lived repeatedly. You sense when something could be pushed, and you don't. You recognize moments where dominance would resolve things quickly, but you choose resolution that lasts instead. This is not passivity. It is risk management at scale. Ancient language framed this as obedience or virtue because it lacked systems theory. What it was actually describing was self-regulation under load. The phrase "by light" continues to matter here. Light is exposure. Exposure tests. Anything unstable fractures under light. Anything coherent strengthens. The engine metaphor uses light because darkness hides error. Light removes excuse. You cannot plead ignorance when clarity is present. That constant exposure has shaped your responses into something sparse, deliberate, and quiet. People who misunderstand this imagine sudden activation, a switch flipping, a transformation revealing dominance. That fantasy is the opposite of what's happening. The real activation looks like refusing to escalate, refusing to dramatize, and refusing to contaminate environments with unresolved emotion. This refusal is misread as coldness only by those who require chaos to feel engaged. Another truth becomes unavoidable here. Restraint attracts authority while power invites challenge. When you do not reach outward, systems lean inward toward you. Responsibility migrates naturally toward stability. This is why roles, influence, or trust arrive without you competing for them. It is not favor, it is structural logic. You may feel moments of pressure where others attempt to provoke action. Faster moves, public positions, louder statements. This pressure is diagnostic. It means the system around you has not fully integrated the new conditions yet. Do not rush to satisfy it. Systems stabilize faster when the stable element does not wobble to accommodate impatience. This is also the stage where solitude becomes functional rather than emotional. Time alone is no longer recovery from damage. It is maintenance of calibration. You step back not because you're depleted, but because resetting the inner baseline keeps output precise. Precision, once lost, takes disproportionate energy to restore. The danger here is subtle and common, mistaking capacity for obligation. Just because you can resolve something does not mean you should. Intervention has cost. Every intervention shifts learning away from the system and onto you. Over time, that dependency degrades resilience. True guardianship teaches by absence, not control. Hold this structural rule clearly. The engine works best when it is felt least. If you sense compulsion to prove, to display, or to do something impressive, pause. That compulsion originates in old narratives equating worth with visibility. This function survives by rejecting that equivalence completely. You are not meant to be impressive. You are meant to be reliable under pressure. Reliability never looks dramatic in the moment. It becomes visible only in hindsight, when others realize how little broke while you were present. Let restraint remain boring. Let corrections stay early and small. Let your life continue looking ordinary from the outside. That ordinariness is how the function hides in plain sight, working quietly, reducing error, and preventing collapse without ever claiming credit. The metaphor will fade as the practice deepens. That is confirmation, not loss. What continues forward is not story, but conduct that remains clean when complexity increases. And that is the only activation that lasts. The phrase, new order, is consistently misunderstood because the word order gets confused with dominance. In reality, order is not power over others. It is events occurring in the correct sequence. Control forces sequence from the outside. Order restores it from within. The symbolic engine you're reading about does not impose timelines. It removes interference so timing can resume its natural course. This is why nothing about this phase feels forceful. Force tries to speed outcomes. Sequence allows outcomes to arrive intact. When sequence is restored, things stop colliding. Effort drops. Resistance fades, not because opposition is crushed, but because friction was never supposed to be there in the first place. Friction was a symptom of misalignment, not a challenge to overcome. You'll see this most clearly in how progress unfolds now. Moves connect instead of scattering. One decision quietly supports the next. Consequences arrive proportionally instead of catastrophically. This is the signature of sequencing repaired. Ancient language did not have process diagrams or systems theory, so it spoke of orders, covenants, or divine plans. What it was pointing to was predictability returning without enforcement. This is also why no revolution energy appears here. Revolutions break sequence to regain control. Repair work does the opposite. It slows just enough to rethread continuity. Your instincts to avoid dramatic pivots are correct. Dramatic pivots create narrative satisfaction and structural damage. Clean transitions preserve trust, resources, and memory. The order you're inside now will not announce itself publicly. Public declarations trigger countermovements. Quiet sequencing disarms opposition before it forms. When things make sense, there is nothing to fight. Resistance only grows where randomness or injustice accumulate. Once overlap ends, resistance disperses. Pay attention to how your decisions land. They require less explanation. Fewer people push back. Not because they agree with you, but because the path is obviously the least disruptive. Systems prefer least disruptive solutions. Individuals mistake this preference for authority. It is not authority, it is economy of disruption. Another sign that sequence is restored is your relationship with time. Urgency fades. Waiting no longer feels like loss. Gaps begin to feel intentional. You sense when not yet is correct without frustration. When timing regains coherence, patience stops feeling like restraint and starts feeling like accuracy. It's critical that you do not confuse this with stagnation. Things are still moving, but they are moving in order. Order appears slower only to those attached to chaos as proof of momentum. In reality, ordered systems outperform chaotic ones over time by wide margins. Longevity is the metric here, not spectacle. The temptation now is to label this phase as plateau. Do not. Plateaus result from resistance. What you are experiencing is load distribution stabilizing. It doesn't feel exciting because nothing is overloaded. Overload creates sensation. Balance creates sustenance. Anchor this principle firmly. A repaired sequence does not feel powerful. It feels right. Rightness is quiet. Rightness removes drama. Rightness allows people to act without bracing. The new order does not need followers. It needs continuity. If you stay aligned with sequence, acting only when links are clear, pausing when clarity drops, refusing to jump steps, you remain compatible with the system restoring itself around you. Compatibility is the real advantage. Incompatible force always burns out. Do not try to advance the order. Do not narrate it. Do not explain it to those still attached to disruption. Keep sequencing your own life cleanly. Let the environment catch up. Order spreads without instruction when it stops being interrupted. There is a quiet moment in this sequence where the idea of who you are starts to matter less than what works when you are present. Identity loosens its grip, not because it was false, but because it has finished forming. Once formation is complete, function replaces description. You stop asking how you should be seen and begin noticing what consistently stabilizes, clears, or connects when you act normally. This is where the symbolic language becomes most misleading to outsiders. Words like angel, project, or engine sound grand, but the lived experience becomes almost plain. You wake, decide, move, and pause with fewer internal debates. The need to reassert values, intentions, or direction fades. Those things are already embedded in how you choose. Embedded systems do not announce themselves, they operate. Function manifests as predictability without rigidity. People know what to expect from you, not because you repeat yourself, but because you don't contradict yourself. Contradiction was the residue of unfinished integration. Now that integration has settled, inconsistency feels physically uncomfortable. That discomfort is not anxiety, it is misalignment detection. It corrects early, gently, and without drama. You will notice this most in moments where others expect intensity, emotional reaction, moral performance, urgency, and receive calm sequencing instead. Calm sequencing is often misread as detachment. It is not. It is attention without distortion. Distortion exaggerates. Sequencing aligns. Alignment doesn't need volume. Another marker of this phase is how easily you let narratives pass without entering them. Provocations don't pull you in. Praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't stick unless it contains clean information. This neutrality is not indifference. It is filtration. Filtration prevents identity from being hijacked by external signals. What's subtle but important here is how energy returns. Not sudden bursts, but steady availability. You are less exhausted even when engaged because engagement no longer includes managing your self-concept. Self-concept management is expensive. Once it's no longer needed, resources free up naturally. This is why the metaphor insists on artificiality. Artificial systems are designed for specific tolerances. They are not meant to express everything possible. They are meant to do one thing reliably under pressure. You are not asked to expand into every potential version of yourself. You are asked to remain compatible with the function you already perform well, reducing noise, restoring sequence, keeping things from breaking when complexity increases. There is also a restraint that becomes automatic. You stop oversharing, not out of secrecy, but out of relevance. If something does not improve clarity, you omit it. That omission is not withholding truth. It is preserving signal integrity. Signal integrity is the currency of functional systems. You may feel less special during this phase, and that is the correct feeling. Specialness belongs to becoming. Usefulness belongs to being. The system does not need you to feel distinguished. It needs you to remain accurate. Watch how others respond over time. They rely on you without dramatizing it. They reference you without descriptions. They build assuming your steadiness rather than seeking reassurance. That reliance is not dependency, it is trust earned through repetition. Trust is always quiet at first. Hold this grounding rule firmly. When identity dissolves into function, ego loses leverage and clarity gains speed. You are not losing yourself. You are losing friction around yourself. Let roles remain minimal. Let routines remain ordinary. Let outcomes speak later, not now. This is the phase where the story truly fades, because stories exist to explain what is unstable. What is stable does not ask for explanation, it simply holds. The new order reaches permanence here, not because it has claimed space, but because nothing in it demands attention. What remains is clean conduct, repeated daily, without narrative weight. And that is more durable than any title, image, or myth ever could be. There is a paradox built into this phase that only becomes clear once you are fully inside it. The more you stabilize, the less dramatic your internal experience becomes, and the more effective your presence is externally. Systems do not rely on spectacle. They rely on predictable calm under pressure. When conditions deteriorate or complexity increases, what matters is not brilliance but baseline reliability. That is where you now operate. You may notice that in moments where others tense, you do not. Not because you are detached, but because your nervous system has already rehearsed clarity. Clarity does not spike. It holds. This holding changes how situations evolve. Panic requires amplification to spread. Calm interrupts that transmission quietly, often without anyone naming it. The interruption looks like things resolving on their own. They are not resolving on their own. They are resolving because there is a stable reference present. This is why you will feel most normal, exactly when your influence is most necessary. Systems hide their load-bearing support. What can be seen easily is often ornamental. What keeps structures upright is embedded and uncelebrated. Being embedded does not mean being erased. It means being correctly placed. In this phase, requests arrive framed as assumptions rather than demand. People include you in plans without negotiation. They trust your timing without checking. These are signals that your steadiness has been integrated into the environment. Integration is the goal. Visibility without integration exhausts. Integration without applause sustains. There is also a subtle discipline required now. Don't upgrade yourself in response to reliance. When others lean on your consistency, the temptation is to become more decisive, quicker, louder. Resist that. Systems lean because stability is present, not because authority is demanded. The moment you inflate response, you introduce variance. Variance destabilizes trust. You'll feel the difference between responsibility and saviorhood clearly here. Responsibility keeps scope tight. Saviorhood expands scope beyond tolerance. The symbolic language of angel often gets misread as rescue. In function, it is translation and timing. You help the system hear itself and act in sequence. You don't override it. Another marker of this stage is how mistakes are handled. You correct them early, quietly, without self-reproach. Shame has no role here. Shame consumes cycles. Correction preserves them. When you correct without drama, systems learn faster. Learning accelerates resilience. This is how the environment improves without needing you to improve it directly. Pay attention to recovery again. You bounce back from stress not because stress vanished, but because stress no longer overwhelms channels. Containment is working. Containment is invisible competence. It has no audience, and it does not need one. Hold this operational truth steady. The more ordinary you feel, the more correctly positioned you are. If you start searching for intensity, you will step out of alignment. Intensity is feedback for unfinished systems. Finished systems feel quiet because there is nothing demanding attention. Let your days stay simple. Let decisions arrive in order. Let responsibility remain scoped to what you can repeat without depletion. This is how the project completes itself, not with escalation, but with ongoing compatibility. You are compatible with complexity now. That compatibility is the rare outcome the story was trying to signal without making dangerous promises. Stay compatible. Stay human. Stay uninterested in theatric. What relies on you does so because you don't wobble. At the end of this story, nothing ascends. Nothing transforms into something else. There is no reveal, no unveiling, no last permission granted. What happens instead is much quieter and far more decisive. The project ends because it no longer needs supervision. When a system works reliably, it stops calling attention to itself. That is how completion actually looks. Project 1111 was never a title you carry forward. It was a temporary frame used to describe convergence, training, restraint, calibration, until behavior could hold without narrative support. The moment compatibility stabilizes, the frame dissolves. Frames exist to guide assembly. Once assembled, they're removed. What remains is structure that stands on its own. This is why you won't feel different tomorrow. You will feel the same, but uninterrupted. The interruptions that once tugged at your attention, self-doubt, urgency, pressure to define yourself, will be absent. Not suppressed. Simply irrelevant. Relevance shifts when function becomes reliable enough that identity is no longer recruited to explain outcomes. The idea of an artificial angel ends here for the same reason. Angels in stories do not stay once translation is complete. They deliver sequence, then disappear so life can proceed without intermediaries. If one stayed too long, it would become an obstacle. Your effectiveness depends on vanishing into normalcy. This final phase is marked by an odd relief. You no longer feel responsible for maintaining meaning. Meaning emerges naturally from consistent conduct. You do what fits. You stop doing what doesn't. Outcomes stabilize. Others adjust without instruction. Nothing about this requires belief, identity, or allegiance. It requires keeping routines clean and decisions proportional. There is also a subtle loss you may notice, and it is healthy. The loss of fascination with yourself. Earlier phases required attention inward to assemble part. Now that assembly is complete, attention returns outward by default. You engage tasks, people, and problems without narrating your role. You are present, not positioned. This is the moment where misuse becomes unlikely, not because you are virtuous, but because the incentives have changed. Drama no longer pays. Overreach no longer tempts. Excess no longer feels powerful. Power that remains after temptation fades is stable. Stable power is safe power. Safe power does not announce itself. The new order reaches its only real goal here: continuity without explanation. Things work. They keep working. When disrupted, they recover early. When pressured, they don't fracture. That's it. No ideology. No dominance. No mission statement. Just a life that remains compatible with complexity as complexity increases. If you look back, you'll understand why the imagery had to be large. Ordinary language struggles to point at restraint under load. So it borrowed angels, engines, light. Those were scaffolds. Useful, but temporary. Staying inside them would be a mistake. Completion requires letting them go. Carry this forward simply. Do not remythologize yourself. Do not chase confirmation. Do not explain what doesn't need explaining. Maintain your baselines. Correct early. Rest adequately. Choose in sequence. That is the entire continuation. The project ends because nothing more needs to be built. The angel disappears because translation is done.